Nobody saw it coming, but we should have. The warnings were there. Flickers on old military satellites, deep space frequencies going dark, and a quiet shift in our planet's magnetic field. Governments shrugged it off, called it solar activity. But some of us knew better. I wasn't a general or scientist, just a man who'd spent enough time in war zones to smell death before it showed up. And what I smelled that morning wasn't sunshine and hope. It was war. Old-fashioned, full throttle, no rules war. They called themselves the Zardari Dominion, some highborn race of interstellar conquerors with skin like silver armor and voices like grinding metal. Arrogant bastards. Their message to Earth was broadcast across every frequency, hijacking satellites, phones, TV, even our old radios. Their leader stood there, wrapped in robes that glowed with some kind of otherworld tech, speaking our language like he'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror 1,000 times. "Humans," he said, "your time of independent evolution is over. Kneel or perish." People panicked. Politicians scrambled. There were protests in the streets, religious fanatics chanting about divine judgment, and governments tripping over each other trying to negotiate or deny the threat. But me? I just cleaned my old rifle and packed a duffel bag. See? They didn't know what we were. They saw our movies, intercepted our comms, studied our wars and thought we were weak. They saw our political divisions, our addiction to tech, our endless bickering online, and they mistook it for failure. What they didn't understand was that humanity thrives in chaos. It's where we were born. Fire, famine, blood, betrayal. We crawled through all of it and didn't just survive. We got meaner, smarter, deadlier. They sent the first wave at dawn. Massive ships that blotted out the sun. Cities went dark as electromagnetic pulses fried everything. But that was their first mistake. They hit us with tech, not expecting that we'd already lived through worse. We weren't relying on clean energy and AI-run defense systems. We had old diesel trucks, underground bunkers, radio silence, and veterans who didn't need a GPS to kill. The Armada hovered over New York, Beijing, Moscow, London, thinking they'd scare us into surrender. Instead, they gave us a target. One thing unites mankind faster than anything else: a common enemy. The moment they fired their first shot, obliterating a small town in Arizona just to prove a point, they sealed their fate. I was in a basement outside Chicago with a group of ex-military nuts, survivalists, and one brilliant teenage hacker who'd figured out how to trace their fleet's signals. He looked up from his laptop and said, "They think we're primitive. Let's prove them right, then wrong." We launched hell. Crude, homemade EMPs that piggybacked on their own frequencies. Molotovs mixed with chemical waste. Drones built from scavenged tech and duct tape. And it worked. Their ships started falling out of the sky. We took back the ground inch by inch, not because we were stronger, but because we were mad. Mad that they came here thinking we were less. Mad that they thought they could just take and rule and enslave. Mad that they thought history didn't make us monsters. I remember standing over the smoking wreck of one of their commanders, his body twitching, his metal armor cracked open like a broken can. He looked up at me with disbelief in those black, pupil-less eyes. I knelt beside him and said, "You shouldn't have picked Earth." He didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. He knew he'd messed with the wrong species. And this was only the beginning. The days that followed the first drop were madness. You'd think an alien invasion would bring people together, that we'd lock arms and sing Kumbaya around a campfire. But that's not how humans work. We're not a unity species. We're wolves, pack animals. We rally around leaders, not ideals. So what we got wasn't one Earth force fighting back. We got thousands of factions, militias, mobs, and broken armies, each with their own way of turning rage into retaliation. And we didn't wait for orders. Cities became front lines. Forests became traps. Highways were hunting grounds. The aliens didn't know how to process it. They came expecting a single coordinated defense force, something centralized they could cut off at the head. Instead, they found chaos. Dirty, rabid, defiant chaos. Every street they landed on turned into a war zone. They'd never seen civilians fight like this. Women with bats, kids with firebombs, old men loading rifles they hadn't touched since Nam. I was leading a ragtag group we called the Dirtborn. No uniforms, no ranks, just pissed-off people with nothing left to lose. There was Jesse, a former Marine who lost both his legs in Syria, rigged himself a pair of exoskeleton stilts from scrap, and walked like a damn machine. Then there was Dante, ex-gang member turned demolition expert, and Malik, a skinny, quiet kid who used to repair phones, now reverse engineering alien weapons like he was born for it. Yeah, we had killers and crazies, but we had purpose. By the time we moved in, the Zardari troops were pinned in 3 ruined blocks, using their tech shields to stay alive. Problem was, those shields didn't stop sound. And that's where we got nasty. We rigged massive speaker systems, salvaged from stadiums, and blasted every nightmare sound we could find. Babies crying, war sirens, blood-curdling screams, the sound of metal grinding on bone. They lost their nerves. They broke ranks. And we pounced. I remember running through the smoke, rifle in hand, boots hitting blood-stained concrete, the air thick with burning ozone and copper. Jesse was beside me, limping fast, one of his stilt legs sparking but still holding. He was screaming something, maybe my name, maybe just rage, but I couldn't hear it. All I heard was my own pulse and the roar of battle. One Zardari came at me from behind a flipped truck, 7 feet tall, armored to hell, swinging a blade shaped like a crescent moon. I didn't think. I ducked under the swing, jammed my blade into the gap in his armor under the jaw, and pulled. His blood wasn't red. It hissed like boiling mercury. He collapsed like a collapsing mech, sparks dancing from his neck. I didn't stop to watch him die. It was brutal. They fought hard. Say what you want about the Zardari. They were arrogant, but not cowards. They stood their ground even when the odds flipped. But that was the thing. Earth taught us to fight dirty. We learned to win not by being stronger, but by being meaner. The streets taught us that. War zones taught us that. History taught us that. We don't conquer by noble battle. We conquer by breaking the enemy's spirit. When the dust cleared, all that remained was wreckage and bodies. We lost people too. Dozens. Good people. People I'd shared stories with, ate rats with, dug trenches beside. But we'd won that round. More importantly, we'd sent a message. Earth wasn't a backwater world waiting to be claimed. We were the wolves at the edge of the galaxy, teeth bared and eyes wide open. That night, we gathered in the skeleton of an old church. No roof, stained glass shattered, pews overturned. We drank what booze we had left, patched each other up, and listened to the silence. No bombs, no alien drones, just wind. Dante lit a cigarette with one of the still glowing alien weapons and said, "You think they'll come again?" I nodded. Yeah, and next time they'll bring everything. And they did. 3 days later, the second wave came. Bigger ships, heavier armor. They didn't send soldiers this time. They sent exterminators, machines, tall as buildings, with glowing red sensors and limbs that snapped like whips. They didn't ask for surrender. They didn't speak. They just started killing. First they hit Denver, then Dallas, then Berlin. Cities started disappearing overnight. Nothing but molten craters and radioactive clouds. We watched it all happen on jacked-up satellite feeds, powerless to stop it. It crushed morale across the resistance. Entire factions went dark. People started fleeing into the wilds, thinking maybe nature would shield them better than cities. But fear makes men stupid. Running wasn't the answer. Hitting back was harder, smarter. That's when Malik stepped up. He'd been quiet since the first battle, locked in his corner, soldering wires, muttering to himself. Turns out he wasn't just reverse engineering alien tech. He was rewriting it, figuring out how to use their energy cores to power old missiles, how to overload their shields with frequency hacks, how to hijack their comms and feed them false coordinates. "We can't win with bullets," he told me, eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. "But we can blind them, confuse them, starve their systems." And just like that, we weren't fighting a losing war anymore. We were fighting a psychological one. Every night we launched guerrilla attacks, not to kill, but to disrupt. We'd broadcast screams into their ships, loop messages from their fallen, forge messages between their commanders that triggered infighting. It worked. The machines didn't crack, but their handlers did. The fear spread. They started making mistakes. And we capitalized. I led a raid on a dropship compound outside Kansas City. It was risky, too risky, but we had intel that one of their generals was coordinating fleet movements from there. We hit them hard, fast, and loud, explosives in the fuel lines, EMPs rigged to explode inside their command rooms. We didn't get the general alive, but we made sure he didn't leave either. The whole site went up like a funeral pyre. But something changed after that. We started noticing strange things. Zardari troops acting erratic, ships hesitating in orbit, their once perfect formations breaking apart mid-flight. Malik said the tech we'd infected them with was spreading. An unintentional virus carried through their systems. It wasn't just breaking them, it was confusing their very code. He looked at me one night, eyes wide with realization, and said, "We're not just fighting them anymore. We're rewriting them." And that's when I knew. This wasn't just about defending Earth. This was about turning the tide, making them fear us. The sky was bleeding again. Red streaks cut across the clouds like open wounds, each one trailing behind a dying alien ship. Some nights we'd cheer as the wreckage rained down. Other nights we just watched in silence. The war was no longer about victory. It was about not forgetting why we were still fighting. By the time we reached the 3rd month, the Earth had changed. Cities were gone. Oceans boiled in spots where alien cores had detonated. The moon had a jagged gash across its surface where one of their dreadnoughts had crashed trying to run. Satellite communication was dead. There was no internet, no news, no orders. The only thing we trusted was word of mouth and shortwave radio. And still, we pushed forward. Malik's virus had done something none of us expected. It didn't just disrupt the enemy, it spread through their hierarchy. The Zardari command structure wasn't built for disobedience. Their soldiers were linked into a shared mental grid, a kind of digital hierarchy where loyalty was controlled at the neural level. But when Malik's code got in, it didn't just cause glitches. It broke trust. Some units started acting independently. A few even defected. Yeah, defected. We didn't believe it at first. The first time a Zardari unit dropped its weapons and sent a surrender signal, we thought it was a trap. Jesse wanted to blow them off the face of the planet, but Malik begged me to wait. He read their transmissions, dug into the code, said something was changing in them, that their hierarchy was crumbling. I didn't trust it. I didn't trust them. But I trusted Malik. So we took them in. 3 Zardari. No armor, no weapons, just confusion and silence. They didn't speak, not the way we did. Their voices weren't meant for human ears. But Malik found a way to bridge it, built a translator using their own broken tech. When they finally spoke, it wasn't what I expected. "We were not allowed to feel," the first one said. "Now we feel. It hurts." That shook me more than any battle had. Their names weren't names the way we understood them, just code identifiers. Malik gave them new ones, called the first one Ash because he came from fire, the second Splice because he was part machine. The third didn't speak, so we just called her Echo. They stayed with us, watched us, learned from us, and slowly, painfully, started helping. That wasn't an easy sell. Plenty of humans wanted them dead. Jesse nearly shot Ash in the face when he tried to repair one of our damaged drones, but then Ash saved Malik's life during a raid, threw himself into the path of a collapsing support beam and took the hit, crushed his entire left side, should have killed him, but he lived, healed, and never stopped helping. We started learning things about the enemy, their weaknesses, their fractured leadership, how the central mind, the thing controlling their war effort, was starting to fracture. Malik said it was like a dying AI, once perfect, now glitching, sending bad orders, losing control, crumbling from within. "We don't have to win every battle," he told me one night. "We just have to outlast their logic." That became our mission. Break the enemy's logic, break their rhythm, make them question everything they thought they knew about humans. We started broadcasting lies, messages saying Earth had built a planetary shield, that we'd summoned reinforcements from other galaxies, that human resistance had merged into one unbeatable force. None of it was true, but we made it sound real, used stolen frequencies, copied their command formats. Even Ash helped, whispering the right words in the right tone. The Zardari started pulling back. One by one, their ships abandoned the skies. Their troops retreated into hiding, like predators suddenly unsure of their prey. We hunted them, not because we needed to, but because we wanted them to feel fear. Real fear. The kind humans lived with every day under their shadow. And then they retaliated. They launched a purge. They stopped trying to control us and decided to erase us, sent a new class of exterminator ships, blacker than space, no signals, no warnings. They dropped in silence, moving like shadows. We called them ghost ships. They didn't use energy weapons or missiles. They released clouds, nanotech clouds that melted anything with a heat signature. People, buildings, everything. We lost 3 cities in 4 hours. One of them was Portland. I had friends there, fighters I trained with, families we'd evacuated, gone in a blink. The footage we got, grainy, choppy, filled with static, showed people screaming as their skin dissolved, their bones stripped to dust. The clouds didn't just kill, they erased. We knew the ghost ships had to be stopped, but no one knew how. No weapon worked. Missiles didn't track them. Bullets went right through them. The nanoclouds swallowed explosives before they could detonate. Even Malik was stumped. "They're not ships," he finally said. "They're living programs. Think of them like a virus that thinks." So we fought back the only way left. We baited them, drew one into the Rockies. A trap. We used human heat signatures, real people, volunteers, huddled together in old bunkers deep in the mountains. The ghost ship came, like we knew it would, but we'd rigged the mountain with enough explosives to flatten a continent, wired every cave, every tunnel, every ridge, and when the ship dropped low enough, we buried it. Rock and fire swallowed the machine. The shockwave was felt for miles, and when the dust settled, the mountain was gone. So was the ship. One down. Dozens more to go. The price was steep. Most of the volunteers didn't make it. I visited the graves myself. No names, just markers. But we remembered. We always remembered. That victory, though, it sparked something. Across the planet, others started trying the same thing, luring ships, using bait, trapping them in frozen lakes, in volcanic vents, in deep canyons. Some traps failed, many died, but some worked. And the enemy bled. For the first time, we made them bleed. Then came the fracture. We intercepted a signal, raw, distorted, but clear enough to understand. It was a call from the Zardari homeworld. They weren't sending reinforcements. They were calling the fleet home. Retreat, panic, collapse. Their empire was buckling from the inside. We'd done it. United States, dirt-born, resistance fighters, farmers turned killers, hackers turned warlords. We'd broken them. But it wasn't over. Because a wounded beast is always the most dangerous. The remaining armada, what was left of it, gathered over the Atlantic. Dozens of ships, like vultures circling their last meal. They weren't retreating. They were planning one last strike. Ash came to me that night, broken, limping, half his body scorched from a failed op. He looked at me with those black eyes and said, "They will die trying. But they will try. All of them." "What do we do?" I asked. Ash tilted his head. "Show them what Earth does to the desperate." The night before the storm, the air was heavy. Not with fear. Fear had come and gone months ago, but with the weight of choice. Everyone knew what the next day would bring. Either we'd survive, or we'd carve our names into history by dying loud enough to never be forgotten. The final armada was camped above the Atlantic, like vultures circling over a carcass they hadn't finished picking apart. They weren't sending messages anymore. No threats, no ultimatums, just silence. Cold, tactical silence. It told us one thing: they were done talking. This was their last push, the nail in Earth's coffin, and we were the hammer waiting to break their hand. Our camp was deep in the Appalachian Hills now, hidden beneath layers of rock and camouflage tech scavenged from downed enemy drones. Jesse stood by the edge of the cliff, his mechanical legs clicking softly as he scanned the night sky through a cracked scope. "They're too quiet," he muttered. "Quiet's good," I said, tightening the strap on my gear. "Means they're scared." He gave a humorless laugh. Or confident, could go either way. Behind us, dozens of fighters were prepping in the dim light. Kids barely old enough to shave, and men who should have died in a nursing home, all strapping on weapons, assembling old mortars, fixing drones with salvaged alien cores. Nobody talked much. We didn't need speeches. We had eyes. We had scars. That was enough. Malik was working near the bunker's center, surrounded by a halo of flickering monitors and blueprints. Echo stood beside him like a silent sentry. She never spoke, but her hands moved fast, too fast for a human, reassembling a targeting relay with inhuman precision. Ash had gone dark again, offline somewhere inside one of the alien mind-link hubs, jacked into their system, trying to see what was coming. "We have a window," Malik said, looking up from the screen. "Their formation is static. They're waiting for sunrise, some ceremonial protocol maybe, but it gives us 8 hours to hit them before they strike." Jesse spat. "Dumb aliens want a dramatic sunrise battle. Typical." "They're not expecting us to go airborne," Malik added. "We don't have an air force," I reminded him. "Not a human one," he said with a grin. That's when he showed me what he'd been building. The hangar, deep inside a collapsed mine shaft, housed what used to be a Zardari scout craft. Malik had been working on it for weeks, reverse engineering its controls, stripping out its neural interface, and replacing it with a clunky but functional manual system. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't safe, but it flew. "Can it carry nukes?" I asked. "It can carry rage," he said. "But yeah, also nukes." So we had a plan. A mad, stitched-together, suicidal plan. Hijack one of their own ships, strap as many explosives to it as we could carry, fly it straight into the center of their command fleet, and detonate it from the inside. Classic human maneuver. No subtlety, no mercy. We picked a team. Jesse, because he wouldn't let anyone else die in his place. Dante, because he'd rigged more explosives than anyone else on the planet. Malik, because only he could keep the ship alive mid-flight. And me, because someone had to finish this. We said our goodbyes like soldiers always do, half joking, half hoping it wouldn't be real. Some of the younger fighters cried. One handed me a photo of his daughter, said, "If you make it back, tell her I didn't run." I pocketed it. Didn't promise anything. By midnight, we were in the sky. The ship groaned under the weight of our gear. Its metal belly was crammed with every explosive we could find. Salvaged warheads, stolen plasma cores, alien fusion batteries wired together with more guts than science. We didn't have shields. We didn't have stealth. But we had momentum. And Earth's rage-riding shotgun. The Atlantic was a black mirror below us. The stars above barely shone through the haze of orbital debris and storm clouds. And then, we saw them. Dozens of ships. Towering, sharp-edged alien things that looked like obsidian daggers floating in the sky. Their hulls shimmered with eerie blue light, weapons ports glowing like demon eyes. They weren't flying. They were waiting. As we approached, one of the cruisers blinked a light, a signal. It recognized the ship. That was our window. "Hold course," Malik whispered, fingers dancing over the controls. We passed the first line. No response, passed the second. Still nothing. Then the third cruiser scanned us. A flash of red lit the cockpit. Warning. Suspicion. Malik cursed. "They're pinging our heat signature. Something's off." "They know," Jesse said, tightening his grip on the side rail. "They just don't believe it yet." Dante moved to the bomb rig, flipping switches. 30 seconds until we're close enough to overload. The central command ship came into view. Massive, like a floating city. That was our target. That was the heart of the beast. Then the radio crackled. A voice, broken, distorted, alien. "Identify. Vessel deviation detected. You are off formation. Respond." Malik said nothing. "Respond," the voice repeated, more insistent. I leaned into the mic and said, "Here's our response." Then I pulled the trigger. The bomb rig began its countdown. 10 seconds. 9. The cruisers flared to life around us, red lights flashing across their hulls, plasma cannons unfolded like insect limbs. Alarms shrieked. 5 seconds. Jesse grabbed Malik and shoved him toward the escape pod. "Get out, now!" Malik fought it. "I can—" "No, get the intel out. You're not dying here, genius." 3 seconds. Dante locked eyes with me. No words, just a nod. 2. I hit the override on the autopilot, aimed straight for the command ship's core. 1. Then everything turned white. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the ship. I was floating. Burning debris all around, silence in my ears, flames in the sky. Malik's pod had ejected just before the detonation. I'd seen it flash out into the void. Jesse and Dante, they were gone. So was the fleet. The explosion had triggered a chain reaction. Their plasma cores weren't built to absorb that kind of internal overload. One by one, the command ships burst like dying suns, casting fire across the clouds. The Atlantic boiled beneath them. Shockwaves rolled across the coastline. Earth wasn't conquered. Earth had fought back. And Earth had won. The ocean never went back to normal. Where the Zardari fleet once hovered, now there was only steam, twisted debris, and the occasional glow of alien core remnants boiling just beneath the surface. The Atlantic looked wounded, scarred by fire and thunder. And in a way, it was. We all were. I don't remember getting pulled from the wreckage. One moment, I was drifting through a sky lit by fire and shrapnel. The next, I was waking up in a darkened room, my ribs wrapped in bandages, my left arm numb from the shoulder down. A thin fourth dangled above me, half empty and dusty. The room smelled like burnt copper and disinfectant. Malik sat at the far wall, hunched over a portable comms unit made from alien scrap. He looked different. Gaunter, eyes sunken, beard rough and untrimmed, like he'd aged 10 years since the explosion. "You're alive," he said without looking up. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw. Only a whisper came out. "Jesse? Dante?" He nodded, slow. They didn't make it. That hurt more than the burns. Jesse was more than just a fighter. He was the spine of our movement, the guy who never blinked in the face of death, who laughed through pain and stared down machines twice his size without flinching. And Dante? Hell, Dante was the soul. Crazy, reckless, always the first to volunteer for the worst jobs. Gone. Both of them. Just like that. I forced myself up, groaning as every muscle screamed. "How long?" I asked. 5 days. 5 days since we'd dropped a stolen ship into the heart of the alien fleet. 5 days since we'd lit the Atlantic on fire. 5 days of silence. Did it work? Malik finally turned, his face pale and grim. Yes. More than we expected. He pulled a screen toward me, tapped a few commands. A grainy satellite feed flickered to life. Or what was left of one. The image was dark, broken, but you could still see the aftermath. Massive chunks of Zardari vessels scattered across hundreds of miles. Some floated on the water, some had crashed into the coasts, others just hovered there, lifeless, like ghost ships without a master. "They're gone?" I asked. "Mostly," Malik said. "The command fleet's gone. The last functioning capital ship crashed outside Reykjavik. No signs of life inside. Their chain of command was centralized through that node. You kill the brain. The limbs stop moving." I nodded. Felt numb. It should have been a victory, the kind that gets parades and statues and songs. But instead the silence felt heavier than any battle. There was no cheering. No anthem. Just the sound of the world trying to breathe again through cracked lungs. How bad was the cost? Malik looked away. "Bad," he muttered. "Real bad. We estimate 60% of the major cities are gone or uninhabitable. The ghost ships wiped out nearly 1 billion before we stopped them, and the radiation fallout from some of their core leaks." He shook his head. "It'll poison entire regions for decades." We didn't win. We just survived louder. I spent the next few days regaining strength, eating whatever ration packs were left, training my deadened arm to move again. It never regained full strength, but I could pull a trigger with it. That was enough. When I finally walked out of the bunker, the world felt smaller. The sky looked darker. Even the wind carried the scent of ash. But something had changed. People weren't cowering anymore. They weren't begging for salvation. They were moving, working, rebuilding. Atop a hill near the camp, I saw Echo kneeling by a shattered drone. Her fingers moved methodically, stripping out circuits, adjusting gears. She didn't need orders. She just acted. Ash stood nearby, watching her with a strange intensity. He turned as I approached. Half his face was burned, the synthetic layer stripped away to reveal the skeletal frame beneath. He didn't try to hide it. "You destroyed their core," he said. "We destroyed ourselves doing it," I replied. He nodded. "Sacrifice is human." That word, human, it struck me different now. The old version of it had died. This new world, this new race we were becoming. It wasn't the same. We weren't the prey anymore. But we weren't exactly innocent either. A few days later, Malik gathered the survivors. scattered remnants from every continent, every faction. Some arrived on foot, some on bikes cobbled together from drone parts. A few even flew in on the hacked alien crafts we now barely knew how to control. He called it the assembly. Rough. Unofficial. Held in the ruins of an old stadium where nature had started to reclaim the seats. Vines crept up broken scoreboards. Crows nested in rusted beams. But it was shelter. And it was enough. "We need a plan," Malik said to the 100 or so leaders who answered his call. "Not just to rebuild, but to survive what's coming next." Because there was always a next. Turns out the Zardari weren't the only ones in the galaxy. We'd gotten the attention of other empires, some curious, some angry, some terrified that Earth, once a whisper, now a scream, had wiped out an invasion fleet that had crushed a dozen other worlds. They would come. Not now, but eventually. And they wouldn't make the same mistake. "They underestimated us," Malik said, his voice echoing across the broken stadium. "They won't again." The leaders murmured, some nodding, some skeptical. One stood up, a hardened old commander from what used to be South Africa. "What are you suggesting?" he asked. "Unity," Malik said. "A global defense council, not a government, not another flag, but a shield, one language, one protocol, one rule, never again." There was silence. Then a voice from the back. "And if people don't agree?" Malik looked over, eyes hard. "Then we remind them what Earth did to gods." It wasn't a promise. It was a warning. And it was enough. The assembly was far from perfect. Fights broke out. Old grudges re-emerged. Not everyone trusted each other, but no one wanted to face extinction again. That was the glue. That was the real power, fear. And behind that fear, a rising fire. In the weeks that followed, something new started forming. Old tech mixed with alien cores. Soldiers trained in hybrid tactics. Children taught how to identify starship shadows by shape alone. No more innocence, no more ignorance. Earth was becoming something else, not a victim, a threat. And for the first time in our history, humanity stood not just as survivors, but as a warning etched in blood and steel. "We are the last species you should try to conquer." It didn't take long before we saw the stars move again. Not the way stars should move. Not like drifting constellations or the slow burn of distant galaxies. This was different. Calculated, artificial, the kind of movement that screams intelligent life, and the kind that made every surviving radio operator on Earth freeze with dread the moment they saw it. I was on recon duty in the Northern Territories, patrolling one of the old communication hubs buried deep under layers of permafrost. We had turned it into a listening post, scrapped together from broken Zardari tech, old NATO modules, and enough backup batteries to power a city block. It was cold. Bitter cold. But we stayed up there because it gave us the clearest skies. And one night we picked up the signal. It started as a vibration. Low, slow, nearly indistinguishable from background radiation. But it was there. Repeating, like a synthetic heartbeat pulsing through space. We traced it, narrowed it down, and what we saw chilled us more than the frozen air ever could. 4 massive objects, triangle-shaped, heatless, moving in perfect formation just outside Saturn's orbit. No signals, no broadcasts, no mistakes. These weren't explorers. They weren't diplomats. They were scouts. I brought the feed to Malik personally. He didn't speak for a full minute, just stared at the display as the trajectory data scrolled down the screen, blinking red with each update. "They're not Zardari," he finally said. I nodded. Different signature, different hulls. Same size? He tapped a key, pulled up something from the black archives, Zardari battle logs we'd decrypted months ago. One entry stood out. A warning, buried deep in an old comms record. Contact lost near Sector A-99. Suspected Grail presence. Silence advised. Grail. A name we hadn't seen before. Not in any intercepted transmission. Not in any post-war data dumps. Just that single entry. And the fear implied by it. "What do we know?" I asked. "Nothing," Malik muttered. "Except that the Zardari feared them enough to avoid confrontation." We sat in silence for a moment, the realization hanging in the air between us like a guillotine. "We lit a fire," I said. "And now everything in the dark is staring at us," he finished. Within 24 hours, the assembly was called back. Leaders, scavengers, warlords, hackers, anyone who had a voice or weapons showed up. There was no longer any room for petty disagreements. We knew what was coming. We watched the projections together. Giant holograms lit up in what used to be a football stadium. The new ships were unlike anything we'd seen. No sharp edges, no glowing cores, just matte black behemoths moving with uncanny precision. No visible propulsion, no emissions. "They don't travel like the Zardari," Malik explained. "They phase. Their tech bends space instead of burning through it." Jesse would have called it cheating. Dante would have tried to hijack one for fun. I just saw a threat we couldn't match. Not yet. "We need to hit first," one of the commanders growled. "Strike before they reach Earth." "With what?" Malik snapped. "With sharpened sticks and nostalgia?" The room tensed. But he was right. Our tech was better than before, sure. We'd learned. We'd grown teeth. But we were still young. The kind of young that makes mistakes. The kind that gets killed poking bears in the dark. "Maybe we don't fight," I said. They all turned to me. "Maybe we send a message." Malik raised an eyebrow. "You want to talk to them?" "No," I said. "I want them to see what we did to the Zardari." We launched the beacon 2 days later. A massive drone packed with the entire war record, footage, sensor logs, DNA samples of every battlefield, and a simple message in every known language. "We do not kneel." It moved fast, faster than any manned craft could, designed for one purpose only: to reach the edge of Saturn, intercept the incoming ships, and make them think twice. Whether it worked or not, we didn't know. Days passed, then weeks. The ships stopped moving. They just hovered there. Silent. Watching. Survivors across Earth grew anxious. Some hoped the message had worked. Others feared it had only made us more appealing to destroy. But no matter how many eyes we turned skyward, the invaders didn't budge. Until one did. It broke formation and began descending. Straight toward Earth. We called it the Eye. It didn't attack. It didn't land. It hovered 20 miles above what used to be Washington, D.C., perfectly still, like a black sun blotting out part of the sky. No energy surges, no weapon signatures, just presence. Humanity held its breath. And then came the voice, not in sound, not in writing, in our minds. Every man, woman, and child heard it at once. "You are unstable, dangerous, capable." 3 words, simple, profound, heavy. Malik nearly collapsed when it happened. He said it wasn't a transmission. It was contact, director, neural, like having your soul temporarily hijacked by something older than time. We didn't know how to answer, so we didn't. 3 days passed. The Eye didn't move, didn't speak again. Then a second message came. "We will not interfere. You are not yet a threat to us, but we will watch." And with that, it left, just vanished. The others followed. No explosions, no drama, no sound, just absence, like the universe had swallowed them whole and burped nothing back. We called it a victory, but I knew better. That wasn't a win. That was a warning. They hadn't left because we scared them. They'd left because they were curious, because they wanted to see what we'd do next. Earth changed after that. Not overnight, but faster than anyone expected. The assembly became permanent, rebranded as the Earth Vanguard, not a government, a watchtower, an agreement among the ashes that we would never be caught blind again. Malik became chief of Vanguard Tech, oversaw the merging of Zardari cores with human engineering, created the first true hybrid vessels, ships that ran on plasma but were piloted with grit. Echo and Ash were no longer alien. They were commanders now, symbols of a world that didn't just survive, but adapted. And me? I became the first to lead Earth's new defense fleet. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't rest until I knew, deep in my bones, that if the stars blinked wrong again, we'd be ready. We didn't plan to go to space. Not like this. Humanity wasn't built to expand with peace in mind. We didn't send missions to explore. We sent scouts to prepare. We didn't go looking for life. We looked for silence we could fill. After what the Zardari and the Eye had shown us, nobody on Earth wanted to wait for the next invasion. So we went first. We called it the Reach Protocol, a planetary initiative led by Vanguard designed to take Earth out of isolation, to scout our solar system, push satellites beyond known territories, and, if needed, fight beyond our orbit. The logic was brutal. Strike before you're struck. Hit them where they sleep before they learn your name. And so we left. Our first ship, the Crucible, launched from what used to be the Chilean Andes, now a sprawling steel launch facility fortified with plasma turrets and underground drone bays. The Crucible wasn't beautiful. It wasn't sleek or elegant. It was an ugly, angry, black-crusted war machine, part human metal, part alien core, designed to endure, not to inspire. I stood on its bridge, helmet tucked under my arm, watching the Earth shrink behind us on the main screen. Blue, cracked, cloud-wrapped, still healing, but alive. For the first time, we weren't leaving Earth behind because it was dying. We were leaving because it had teeth again. My crew was hand-picked from across the Vanguard network. Major Aros, ex-Army, scarred and stone-faced, trusted with every ground op. Kira Lane, our deep space pilot, nerves of ice, eyes like radar. Dr. Ram, astrophysicist turned war strategist, fluent in mathematics and violence. And Echo, still silent, still unreadable, but deadlier than any weapon in our arsenal. We'd barely cleared Mars' orbit when we picked up the first trace. A field of debris, faint, scattered, drifting near Jupiter's third moon. At first, we thought it was leftovers from the Zardari, maybe a graveyard of broken invaders. But the wreckage didn't match. It was older, much older. Our drones brought back pieces that cracked apart in our hands. Material we couldn't classify. Designs that bent physics, and amid the ruin, a signal. Faint, nearly dead. Looping. Help me. Ram worked on it for days, trying to break the encryption. It wasn't Zardari, not Grail, not anything we recognized, just a voice. Broken, looped, desperate. The words never changed. No coordinates, no origin. Help me. We argued about it. Aros wanted to nuke the site and move on. Said nothing good ever came from ghost signals. Lane disagreed. If someone's calling for help, someone's alive. No one out here calls for help, Aros growled. Out here it's already too late. Still, I made the call. We tracked the signal to a derelict structure orbiting just outside the asteroid belt. A jagged mess of twisted hull and blinking lights. No defense grid, no movement, just shadows. We boarded. The interior was dark, frozen, airless. Our suits hissed with recycled breath as we moved through the corridors, weapons raised. The walls were covered in symbols, etched deep, not written, like they'd been carved in a panic. We couldn't translate any of it. Then we found the chamber. A cryopod, cracked open, empty, and above it, scratched into the metal wall, one phrase burned in with something more primitive than tech, something desperate. "They are coming." That's when we lost contact with Echo. She'd gone ahead, drawn to something deeper in the ship. We traced her signal to the lower levels. Lane and I pushed forward, while Aros and Ram held position. The lights dimmed with every step. The deeper we went, the colder it got. We found her in a dome-like control room, kneeling before a console that shouldn't have worked, but pulsed with life beneath her hand. Her face was turned upward, eyes wide, not afraid, not even awed, just accepting. "Echo," I said. She didn't move. "What is it?" Lane whispered. Echo's voice came through our comms, clear and sharp. "This place was a prison." I stepped closer. "For what?" She turned slowly, and for the first time since I'd known her, her expression shifted. "Fear." "I don't know," she said. "But it's awake now." We left fast. Didn't even salvage the rest, just burned fuel and got out. Back on the Crucible, we sealed the wreck behind a field drone carrying an automated warning beacon. Standard procedure now. If you don't understand it, you lock it down and warn the next generation. But even as we pulled away, the signal didn't stop. "Help me." Only now it sounded clearer, like it knew who we were. Ram was the one who broke the news. "The signal changed," he said, hunched over the console, sweat running down his temple. "Changed how?" I asked. He turned, face pale. "It knows our names." We headed back toward Earth, fast. But the universe doesn't reward cowardice or caution, not anymore. Halfway through Saturn's orbit, we picked up movement. Not from the Grail, something else. A distortion, not a ship, a shadow. It didn't move in space, it moved through it, like it wasn't bound by speed or force, like it was chewing through dimensions and ignoring the laws we clung to like children clutching bedtime stories. Eros locked weapons. Lane hit evasives. I ordered silence. And it passed. Right through us. Every light in the ship died. Every screen turned black. Every sensor flatlined for exactly 13 seconds. Then it was gone. Just gone. Ram screamed in the medbay, clawing at his own skin, mumbling numbers. Lane passed out cold at the controls, nose bleeding. Echo knelt in the hallway, whispering in her language to no one. I stood in the command chamber, alone, hearing one sound over the intercom. "Help me." But it wasn't desperate anymore. It was amused. We returned to Earth in silence. No songs, no glory, no victory, just silence. The Crucible limped into orbit, half its systems fried, its crew broken in ways we didn't have names for. Lane never woke up. Ram died in his sleep 2 days after the shadow passed through us. Cause of death listed as neurological collapse, but we all knew better. And Echo, she wasn't Echo anymore. She sat by the main viewport for hours, staring into space, whispering numbers no one recognized. We kept her under observation, but not out of fear, out of respect, because whatever had touched her hadn't destroyed her. It had opened something inside her, and I think she understood the thing we'd found, or the thing that had found us. I debriefed the Vanguard in person. Malik was waiting on the surface, older now, worn down. He didn't look surprised when I told him what happened. He just said, "It's begun." The thing we'd awakened, the shadow in the derelict prison, had no name we could understand, no origin, no motive we could reason with. But it had patterns. It moved through solar systems like a ghost, bending gravity, draining energy from stars, whispering to machines. And we weren't the first. It had happened before. Far away. Long ago. A pattern of civilizations that had vanished, not from war, not from plague, but from something deeper. From being noticed. Malik called it the witness. "It doesn't destroy planets," he said. "It erases purpose, it corrodes will, it breaks you from the inside." I didn't know how to fight something like that. But I did know one thing. We would never kneel. The Vanguard went dark. No signals, no broadcasts, just silence and preparation. Every major city turned into a fortress. Mountains were mined for fuel, oceans seeded with defense nets. Even the sky was armed with pulse satellites and kinetic deterrents. We weren't preparing for battle. We were preparing to survive what came next. And what came next was worse than we imagined. Not fleets, not ships, not even destruction. Just dreams. People began hearing things in their sleep, whispers in languages they didn't know, visions of starless skies and hollowed planets. Engineers abandoned their workstations and wandered into the woods. Soldiers broke rank and walked into the sea. The witness wasn't attacking. It was introducing itself. And Earth was cracking under the pressure. I was stationed at Fort Icarus, buried deep beneath what used to be the Swiss Alps, now a heavily shielded command center with a direct neural uplink to the global defense grid. We called it the dead man's switch. If the witness came close enough, if our systems were compromised, this was where the countermeasure would be launched. The last card. The final hand. We didn't know if it would work. We just knew it had to. Echo was there too. She didn't speak anymore, not with words. But she wrote. Pages and pages. Symbols that weren't Zardari, weren't Grail, weren't anything we could trace. Malik tried to decode them but failed. Even I couldn't make sense of them. I think it was poetry. Poetry for something vast. Something terrible. Something watching. The witness came 3 weeks after we returned. Not as a ship, not as an army, as a storm, a silent, swirling distortion that bent the stars and blanketed the moon. It didn't make noise. It didn't trigger alarms. It simply arrived, like the end of a sentence. The world fell quiet. No birds, no wind, no waves, just silence. Until every screen lit up, and every voice on Earth, millions of us, heard the same words in our minds. You are becoming. That was its mistake. It thought we'd fear it. But it didn't understand what becoming meant to humans. Becoming to us was never graceful. It was never beautiful. It was bloody. It was violent. It was defiant. It was evolution by fire. And we'd already been through fire. So Malik made the call. I turned the key. And the Earth launched its final gift, the arc fire. A payload built from salvaged Zardari cores, fueled with our finest reactor tech, guided by Echo's coordinates, and aimed straight at the heart of the storm. It wasn't a weapon. It was a question. Will you bleed? It hit. The storm didn't scream. Didn't flash. It just cracked. A ripple of light burst across the stars, tearing across constellations like a scar. For 1 second, every person on Earth saw it. And the witness left, not defeated, but warned. We didn't celebrate. There was nothing left to celebrate. Just the knowledge that we'd survived again. That whatever was out there, whatever judged us, tested us, studied us, now understood one thing. We were not prey. We were the fire that consumes monsters. Years passed. Earth rebuilt, not perfectly, not peacefully, but steadily. Vanguard grew. The Crucible became a fleet. The stars grew closer. But we never forgot. The wreck in the asteroid belt was sealed, monitored, never touched. The signal stopped, but we still heard it sometimes. In dreams. Help me. Maybe it was a warning. Maybe it was bait. Or maybe it was the last voice of something we once were. Something fragile, desperate, human. And now, we were something more. I stood on the bridge of the new ship, Vengeance 1, watching Earth fade behind us again. Stronger, armored, unafraid. Echo stood beside me, silent. Ahead lay new worlds, new enemies, and a message we carried in every engine flare, every loaded cannon, every breath. We are Earth. We are the last world you will ever conquer. We are coming.